Big-time day in Lubbock, Texas. They have their coach, Joey McGuire, Carlos Silva Jr., Don Williams, the Lubbock Avalanche Journal. They were on it very late into the night, and Carlos responded to a text of mine this morning very early and said, I think I could make it. I know tomorrow they'll introduce Joey McGuire, but he is the new head coach of Texas Tech. Carlos, thanks for your time. Great job on the story, and I know that there's so many things you got to be careful about what you chase or don't chase, and you did it right. What's been the reaction in Lubbock?
Hey, well, obviously, appreciate you waking me up early, Smoak. Obviously, once I kind of got my bearings, total 180 from Matt Wells, because like I had told you guys when we had spoken before, it seemed like there was a Twitter swell or just a social swell for just wanting Joey McGuire. And not only that, but I mean, I'm pretty sure for most people, he's kind of out of left field if you really think about it, because the focus was on Sonny Dykes. It was on UTSA's Jeff Traylor, and then all of a sudden things just kind of changed there. And then, then you have, Joey McGuire, who had a great interview. Obviously, you guys kind of know what he's about, and certainly that's everything checked off all the boxes about being a guy that can recruit the state of Texas, energetic, builds relationships, and that's everything that Kirby Hocutt had mentioned during his presser when it was announced that Matt Wells was let go from Texas Tech, because he wanted someone that could unite the fan base, and certainly it seems like he's doing that, at least on Twitter. Now, granted, however you want to take Twitter to obviously your grain of salt, but it's certainly a big difference from the surprise of many fans when Matt Wells was hired compared to Joey McGuire, where fans seem very, very energetic and very enthusiastic about him.
Do you think he gives the program more of an identity than Matt Wells was able to give it?
I mean, here's the thing, guys. Like, I can't say a bad thing about Matt Wells. He did things the right way. He was doing his job as a coach, but I think there's a difference when a Joey McGuire walks into a high school like a South Oak Cliff or just anything in Dallas compared to a Matt Wells. He is a coaching legend in Texas high school football. Everyone knows him from Cedar Hill and kind of all the things he did there. But I think that the one big thing for Texas Tech now is not only are you going to talk about the double T, but now you've got Joey McGuire walking the halls of some of these high schools. And I think there's something to be said about being able to recruit and being able to recruit at a high level now for Texas Tech, which is something they haven't seen since, I believe, the last year or maybe the first year of Cliff Kingsbury when he was there.
So how's this going to work exactly, Carlos? Joey's going to arrive on campus, just get to recruiting, get to, I guess, trying to fill out his staff and all. In the meanwhile, they're just going to keep on playing, right? Any idea of kind of what interjections he may have as they continue their season? Is he going to be completely away? Like, from your understanding, how's that going to work?
So from my understanding, he's going to, as you guys mentioned, he's going to be the head coach immediately. He's going to be able to interview staff members that he wants to hire for his staff, but Sonny Cumbie will still be the interim football coach for the next 3 games. Obviously, one of them being against Baylor, which I'm sure that one will be interesting for some Bear fans. But up until the end of the regular season, which I'm assuming, or the season, pardon me, not regular season, I'm assuming that would be either after a bowl game or maybe something changes. We can certainly ask him at the noon presser tomorrow. But at least up until this point, the way it's been worded is at the end of the season, he will get to deal with the Texas Tech football team. But I'm sure as of right now, he's trying to build bonds with some of the kids, obviously trying to recruit his own players. I think that's one of the big things now with the transfer portal is recruiting is kind of recruiting the guys that you have on the current team now, along with trying to get some guys that you want to obviously build around, plus getting the high school guys. And the other important thing with getting this kind of all signed away is the fact that you can deal with the early signing period as well, which is going to be huge for Texas Tech instead of having to kind of, wait on that second signing period, the normal national signing day, if you will, in February, where at that point you're kind of really picking and choosing all the recruits that weren't signed in the early signing period.
Yeah, it's a good time to be a new coach in a way, especially when you get a jump start like he's getting. You have the recruiting, the signing day in December, which you can make some tweaks to that, but also the transfer portal as well that now is added to the mix, almost like free agency or Plan B free agency back in the NFL days.
No, absolutely. And as I mentioned to you guys the last time we spoke, Matt Wells did a good job of finding some of those guys and hitting on some of those guys. Just a lot of those guys just got hurt. Marquise Waters, who was supposed to start in the secondary, is out for the year. Reggie Pearson's been in and out with an injury. Tyler Shuck, their starting quarterback, who came from Oregon, was hurt early in the season. So you can fill and plug some holes, if you will, with the free agency, as Matt Wells had mentioned, what it is with the transfer portal. But I think the biggest thing for McGuire right now is just to kind of assess what he has as a football team, obviously figure out his staff, and then not only that, but then just start recruiting, because, I mean, I'm pretty sure he's getting plenty of phone calls and texts just because of what's happened today. But I think the other thing that he's trying to do is he's trying to see, well, who wants to come to Texas Tech and who wants to kind of build something with me. And I think that's really what today is about, is him just trying to, as I mentioned before, just unify that fan base. Not only that, but then just really getting people behind him, which it seems, again, as I mentioned on Twitter, people are just very, very excited about him.
Were you a little bit surprised that the fans so quickly united behind the Joe McGuire hire, considering, like you said, it was out of left field?
No, not really. When I was talking to Don last night, he reminded me that last year when there was a press conference to announce that Matt Wells was coming back, there were there were a little bit of rumors or just some, things coming up saying like, hey, Joey McGuire, he'd be a great guy to bring up to us. And the other thing, too, is people forget that he was up for the job up until Dave Aranda got it at Baylor. So, I mean, certainly people thought very highly of him earlier on. It's just now might be the perfect time for it. He certainly had some other chances when Matt Rule left to go to the NFL, but he decided to wait his time, and now is his time, and he got to pick essentially where he wanted to go, which from what I understand, he really, really wanted to be at Texas Tech. And I'm sure that has to really make, again, the Tech fans just feel good that they've got a guy that not only is going to be their head coach, but a guy that really wants to be in Lubbock and really wants to recruit at a high level. And not only that, but then kind of bring them that winning feeling again that they haven't had in almost a decade.
Carlos, not to put too much on this hire right now or try and look too far ahead, but I am curious just because of, the Chris Beard departure and then the Matt Wells hire not looking out. How important of a hire is this for Kirby Hocutt? And just given the fact that Red Raiders football has kind of been off kilter now for, several seasons in a row, how important is this just all around as far as the trajectory of that program?
I mean, not to sound the way you're kind of asking the question, but I mean, it's certainly an important hire for Kirby, because I mean, this is essentially the next 3 years, and this could be the one that really does kind of show, okay, can you make a good football hire? Because again, Matt Wells didn't work out, Cliff didn't work out for a little bit, and then all of a sudden now you're trying to find, again, I know this is ad nauseum for some people, but football is what, fuels your athletic department. If you're not able to get people in seats for a football stadium that has your most attendance for most because of how big the stadiums are, then something has to get fixed. That's probably why they're going after Joey McGuire now. He's going to obviously infuse the fan base with some of this fervor that they haven't had in several years. And just in terms of losing Chris and kind of all those things, I think that may be a way to look at it just as a total deal. But I think in terms of hiring a football coach, I think Kirby and the committee really knew that they had to get this right, because again, as you guys said, this is going to not only be just a now, it has to be looking into the future as well for Texas Tech football, because you look at all the things that they're trying to do now, building a new football facility and kind of all these things, that they need someone that can kind of usher them into this new era of hopefully a winning football program, which is something they haven't had the last decade.
So Graham Harrell interviewed, and that would be expected because of his legacy and the fact that he's probably looking for the next spot, and he might even get a look, who knows, at Washington State or whatever. But I thought that Graham Harrell was on Joey McGuire's radar when he almost got the job, or was in the mix to get the job to replace Matt Rule. Have you heard anything about that, even though he's still at USC? And have you heard the name of Mike Sarava with Carolina, who was a linebackers coach at Baylor under Matt Rule as a possible defensive coordinator?
You guys are just trying to get through the subscriber-only stuff, aren't you?
Oh, sorry about that, Carlos. Yeah.
No. Y'all are good. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously USC is in a little bit of a change now with Clay Helton leaving, so I think your sources are correct as to what you asked me about Graham Harrell. I think it would be interesting to see if he's able to come back, another former Red Raider. Obviously, you still have Sonny Cumbie that could potentially be your offensive coordinator, who's currently there and still has a deal that goes, I believe, for the next 2 years. I believe he signed a 3-year deal when he was here. And then in terms of, yes, the Panthers linebacker coach, I know Joey McGuire and him have a good relationship. It would be interesting to see. But the one thing I will say is he will have the opportunity to hire a high-caliber assistant, because of the way that Don had written a column about how the committee and some sources had mentioned that they want this next coach to have the resources, that being the monetary resources, to try and hire a staff, whether that's a full recruiting staff, analyst, assistants. I think the one biggest stat that really stood out to me is when USA Today did their survey of college football assistant coaches' pay, as they do every year, last December 2020, if I'm not mistaken. The highest paid assistants for Texas Tech, the OC David Yost and DC Keith Patterson, ranked 125th and 126th. So
Wow.
I think that's something to kind of just take into account as to how you really set up this program for success. And I think the donors and kind of all these people around the program are wanting to get this positive momentum, and they're hoping that Joey McGuire can be the guy that can really lead that charge.
Carlos Silva Jr., Lubbock Avalanche Journal, with us on Sikkim 365 Radio. So he's introduced tomorrow, correct? Is that right, tomorrow?
Yes, noon Tuesday is when they're going to have the press conference announcement. It's open to the fans, and obviously I'm sure that they want to see a big crowd, which I'm sure there will be. And like I said, it's just going to be one of those days where you kind of get all this done, and then the work really starts for Joey and company.
Aaron, Carlos, there is one Texas Tech fan on the chat room who said he's a little bit concerned. He says he and his friends they're concerned that this is like the continuation of the good old boys club, that they promised there would be kind of a big name in this. So not everybody's on board with this. It's kind of a wait and see with some, you think?
Well, here's the thing that I would say is, like, anytime you're in a head coaching search, anyone you pick is going to be a risk. But I think with the points that Kirby brought up, he wanted someone that could recruit Texas. He wanted someone that could build relationships. He wanted someone that could unify the fan base. And he figured with those three, at least, bullet points, he felt that type of coach was something that could, usher them into this hopeful winning attitude, or just this winning era, if you will. And obviously, you can look at a sitting head coach and think, okay, yeah, maybe Sonny Dice could have done something. Maybe Jeff Traylor could have done something. But there are plenty of examples of assistants that go to head coaching job, wink, wink, Baylor, where you've got, some guys that have some success. It takes a little bit of time, but I think that's the other thing. Maybe this is not necessarily going to be the quote-unquote rebuild, but I think it's something to where you can start building something. And I think Joey is the perfect person if you're trying to look at the high schools in Texas, where you can start building depth. You can start building this type of talent where you recruit at a high level and you start to get these high school recruits. And maybe you're not necessarily focused on the junior college and the transfer portal guys to fill in. Maybe you've got some guys that are, 2 or 3 years into your program, and then all of a sudden you kind of build something. And the one thing about Joey as well, he's seen how a rebuild can happen. You guys have seen it firsthand with Baylor. So, it's not like he's unaware of how to do it. He saw it with Matt initially, and now he's seen it with Dave afterward.
No question about it. You will like him, no question. Very accessible to the media. We never got a chance to visit with the assistants once the season began, which was kind of sometimes disappointing because you always you can't get some of the answers, but that's fine. Different coaches. Carlos, great job. Anything else for Carlos, guys? Great job covering this, not just today, but also tomorrow and also into the future. Thanks for your time. Great job on hitting the story as well.
Thanks to you guys, I'm going to get some sleep.
Yeah, Carlos Silva Jr. I think he's really mad at me. Guys, I sent him a text. It was like 7:30. I said, hey, I didn't know. And then, so thanks to Carlos Silva Jr., he was way into the night trying to report this story.
Kirby Hocutt obviously keeps weird hours.
Yeah, absolutely. From salt to the earth. I coach with Joey. He's in my phone. He's a winner and will win right away. For those who also want to know a little bit more insight on him, one of his former players, Dustin Maddox at Cedar Hill High School, who also coached under Coach McGuire at Cedar Hill before he moved to Baylor. He'll join us today. Can he give us his perspective on what this means to Joey McGuire and also those who have played and or coached with him. When we come back, we'll wrap up this 3 o'clock hour, look at a couple of the other games, college football teams who are up or down. Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com, will join us on coaching news, including this one, at 4 o'clock. And this is Sikkim 365 Radio.